Well, let's continue the focus then on the first day of school for coastal provinces. Of course, you heard there from Nasipi Same some of the issues faced in the Western Cape. The Education MEC for that province is Debbie Schäfer. She joins us tonight. We're also joined by the KZN Education MEC, Kwazi Mshengu. Good evening to both of you. Thanks for your time. Debbie, let me perhaps begin with you because we've just come out of that piece where we see scenes that are similar to what happened in Gauteng. First day of school, parents outside gates hoping for some kind of plan to be made for their children. How many learners, as we speak tonight, are yet to be placed in schools?
Well, the figures that I have at the moment, we have 442 grade 1s who still need places and 2,419 grade 8s. And as you mentioned, that was out of 32,000 late applications and 1.1 million children in our schools in total. So it's a very small, tiny, in fact, amount when you consider the number of people in our schools. And we, as I said, we have made incredible strides in ensuring that we have far fewer than we had last year.
Of course, the reality is that for those pupils who are still waiting for a place, them and their parents would feel that this is a great disadvantage. What are you finding are the problems in the system that lead to this?
As I mentioned in your clip, you know, for the last 5 to 6 years, we've had about 20,000 additional learners every single year coming to the Western Cape without the money following them. And we've been having a battle with National Treasury for quite some time. They have now made changes to the way they allocate funding, and they do not take into account growth, but they don't take into account the backlogs that we've had over a number of years. So there's a hugely complex portfolio that takes a long time to really fully explain, and it's not an easy thing to do. But when you have those kind of backlogs, plus more learners coming every year, we aren't able to provide 18 to 20 additional schools per year, even if we had the money, because to try and plan and buy the land and get it rezoned and get the plans approved and get tenders out, it's just not, it's not a simple procedure. So what we're doing is we're trying to, well, first of all, we've created an additional 591 teacher posts so that we can ensure that where there is place, we can have teachers in place for them. We have also been very busy creating additional spaces in schools by adding on classrooms at existing schools, by building mobile classrooms. And in fact, by the end of this year, we'll have created another 18,000 places. So it's a very complex thing to do. And over and above that, we're then getting National Treasury cutting effectively our budget over the medium term period. Which then also interferes with the planning that we have, because we have a 10-year planning cycle for building schools. So as soon as then we suddenly told we don't have the money anymore, it makes it extremely difficult for us. In addition to that, we've had the drought about 3 years ago in the Western Cape, which we didn't receive any additional emergency funding from any source, in fact. So that cost us an additional 300 million rand. And then, of course, we had COVID-19, which cost us last year about 465 million rand, which is almost a third of our infrastructure budget. So we are expected to keep absorbing more and more learners. In addition to that, we're expected to keep absorbing more and more problems that we aren't getting additional funding for. And it's very difficult as a province because we don't have the ability to raise extra funds ourselves. We are dependent on what we get from the national tax base from the National Treasury. Another problem we've had that we've only fairly recently discovered is that the equitable share formula that is applied by National Treasury in allocating money to provinces has not actually included special needs learners. So effectively 6% of our learner population hasn't been funded. So these are the kind of things we have to keep absorbing, which is why it does lead to some of these problems about placement of learners. But we really have made huge strides in the last year.
MEC Mshengu, let me come to you. Your province, of course, is dealing with the aftermath of the floods that we have seen. There may be some reprieve, but certainly no signs that we're out of the woods in terms of what to expect and as far as the inclement weather is concerned. What has that meant for your province today? How many schools have had to remain shut?
Well, indeed, the inclement weather conditions have really caused havoc in our province. 191 schools were affected, and of 191, 90 schools were in dire need of mobile classrooms because there were a number of classes that were affected. But we were quite happy with our day one because of about 6,000 schools in the province, only 17 of them could not open today. 6 were under Utugela district, and we could not open them because of flooding that side. The road to those schools is still not accessible, and we thought it will be dangerous for teachers and learners to try and access the school when the bridges are still underwater and stuff like that. We have seen people drowning, others being washed away by water. So we did not want to risk. That's why 6 of them could not open today. The other 11 are under Ngundlovu district in a place called Wanyavu. Really there the issue has nothing to do with the Department of Education. There is a fight over chieftaincy in that area which is affecting the whole society, the whole community. There is one group of criminals basically who then went about locking all the 11 schools yesterday and leaving notices in the gates that if principals do open these schools, then they will suffer the consequences. And knowing the history of that area in terms of violence and how people really get attacked, you will recall that even during the elections, that area there were some voting stations which could not be opened because of the same issue, and there were people who were attacked in the aftermath of the election. So we did not want to risk the lives of educators and our learners. Hence, we decided to delay until tomorrow. We have received a report from the state security apparatus that we can open tomorrow. They have been on the ground since yesterday and today, and they are satisfied that they are in control of the situation.
Surely, on some level, the department cannot be held to ransom, whether it is by criminal, organizations, as you describe it, that are operating in that area. So let's talk about the mediation efforts that have taken place to try and ensure that when schools do reopen tomorrow, it won't end in chaos.
Well, we are confident that it won't end in chaos, firstly because of the security plan that the police and other law enforcement agencies have put in place around the area. But also the Premier is now in charge of leading the mediation. I am aware that tomorrow he will be meeting with a certain grouping that is involved in the area to try really and calm down the situation and find an amenable solution so that really there's normality around the area. We don't want a situation where our learners will lose more time. A day in education is too many if you lose one day. So we don't want our learners to lose more days. That is why we have had to act very quickly in that regard. But also, we want to call our communities to protect the school, to protect the future of their kids. Because if these kids don't go to school, it is the same families, it is the same community that will suffer, because it will have to live with young people who are not educated, who don't have skills, who can't be absorbed by the economy. So they are not doing a favor to the Department of Education or government. Actually, if they protect the schools, it's about the future of their kids.
MEC Schäfer, let me come back to you. Equal Education Law Center has raised concerns about some schools in your province that are still requesting parents to pay registration fees illegally. So what do you know about it, and why is this practice still taking place?
I'm not aware of that statement today at all by Equal Education. We are certainly, we've sent out communication to schools that is not allowed to happen, and any specifics must please be sent to my office, and we will deal with them accordingly. It is not legitimate, it's not legal. We've told our schools time and time again, and if they're still doing that, then we will deal with it.
How are you going to deal with the issue of overcrowding?
The issue of overcrowding is a problem of the increasing numbers and the decreasing budget. So, and until such time as we get additional funding, it's going to be quite difficult to deal with overcrowding the way we would like to. But we are obviously constantly planning to try and ensure that our classes are not overcrowded. But the more and more people who come to our province and until such time as the funding comes with them, it's extremely difficult to deal with.
So currently, when it comes to those that you have been able to place in schools, what are the ratios that we're looking at in terms of the schools that are overcrowded?
We have 1,500 schools, so I mean I can't give a ratio for every individual school. It's really difficult to answer that question at the moment, off the cuff.
Is there no average that the department works off?
There's an average for all schools. I mean, it's generally, I think the one is to 35 across the board at the moment. But as you know, it's different for every individual school. It's different with high schools and primary schools. It depends on the subjects that are taken at schools. It depends, on number of teachers and so on. So we do have an overall ratio for the whole department, and that is been creeping up. I think it's still under 1:40 at the moment, but it does differ from school to school.
Mr. Mshengu, I want to quickly talk to you about the issue of scholar-learner transportation in your province particularly. There have been other provinces, including the Eastern Cape, that have complained about budget cuts in that front. How is it affecting your province?
It does affect our province, let alone that over the years the scholar transport has not been sufficiently funded. We have 6,000 schools in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. 72% of that is in rural areas, and the budget that we get is too little to cover all the learners that are in need. We are currently transporting about 67,000 learners, but in the waiting list we have over 117,000 learners that do qualify in terms of our policy, but we can't transport them because there's no money. So really the solution is to get more funding.
So what happens in the interim, because ultimately you're having children that are either stuck at home due to bad infrastructure caused as a result of the floods, some of them struggling to access school simply because it's not easily accessible through transport. What are the measures that are in place to ensure that these who are really some of the most marginalized in our society don't lose out on what is happening in the classroom?
Well, our priority was to deal with the learners who have to cross rivers to access schools. And we said all those learners will have to be provided with transport, scholar transport, because it was too risky for them on a daily basis. They have to cross the river. So those ones we have taken care of by and large. Obviously, there will be from time to time, there will be a new settlement that is emerging across the river. We'll have to take care again of that. But there are learners who still have to travel longer distances for them to get to school. And it does affect the performance of the learner because they get to school tired, they can't concentrate. After school, they get home, do other chores, they get tired, they can't do homework. And you can see that from the results that they get. So it's quite a difficult situation. And without additional funding, really, we can't put any other measures as the case, as we want. Preferably, our own ideal situation was that every learner that is deserving in terms of our policy should be transported, but you can't transport them when we don't have sufficient funding for school transport.
All right, it sounds like there are incredible challenges ahead for both of you. We will certainly wish you the best for the 2022 academic year, and we'll be watching to see how things unfold in your respective provinces. The Western Cape Education MEC, Schäfer, the KZN Education MEC, and that is Kwazi Mshengu.